Hey there YouTube, and welcome to Big Mike Beard Wisdom. So today we're going to do a video on my solar panel system that I have. Now, we installed the solar panels back in 2019 when you still got a 30% tax credit off your federal taxes. That credit's dropped a little bit, but you never know, it might be something where someone may want to bring back the credit or maybe even increasing it. This video is going to be kind of like a 10,000 foot view with a couple tips tied in. And then we'll do later videos going deeper into it. So my system's not very big. It's 10 panels in 2 rows with a microinverter for each panel. And then all of that feeds into my Tesla Powerwall 2. Now if you're thinking about going solar, just know that there might be upgrades you have to make. So we want to have to replace the entire circuit breaker panel. And then also there's other things you wind up having to add in. Like you need to have a rapid shutdown. You also need to have a disconnect to disconnect you from the grid. So there might be extra costs besides just the panels that you were planning on and the installation. So besides preparing yourself for costs, another big thing you want to do is basically look at Google Maps, because that's exactly what an installer is going to do. They're going to pull up your house on Google Maps, try and look at the satellite view, and try and identify what the best surface will be in order for them to install the panels on. North and south are up and down. East and west are left and right. And this is basically my house and my property. Now you can see I've got trees here. Used to have a tree there. There are trees here on this side of the garage. A big old tree back here. A tree here. And there's more trees along the back side over here that you can't see. And when they look and evaluate this, what they're going to look for is if they can tell what angle things are at. So you can see kind of the pitch of the roof of the shed or garage. You can see kind of the pitch of the shed and the location of the shed. And you can already see that even though this seems to be maybe springtime, summertime, there's still shadow that's hitting the shed, and there's still shadow hitting the garage. And then with the peaks of the roof, they would see that this is a peaked roof here, a peak here, across, and a peak this way. And normally they would give you a quick estimate that would basically tie in all the great sounding things about solar that everybody's like, oh, this is why I want to do it, which is normally as many panels as possible. But for me, I wanted backup power in case something happened. So I was either going to go with a full-on generator, that way I could power the entire house and garage should something happen, especially in the wintertime, that would cause a complete power failure. But I was also weighing the idea of going solar, and obviously we all know which one won.
So the Tesla app lets me look at a whole bunch of different stuff. But the really cool part is that when you go to power flow, you're able to see how much power your solar system is currently generating, if your house is using any of it, and if any of it's going to the grid. So in what you see right now, you can see that it's generating 2.1 kilowatts. The house is using 0.6 kilowatts, and we're putting 1.5 kilowatts onto the grid. As you can see, from the shadow of the light pole onto the roof, the sun's not at the best angle yet. And you can also kind of tell from where the shadow lines up on the solar panels at the bottom that it's still casting a pretty good shadow, so it's not directly over the solar panels. So this isn't the maximum amount that the solar panels can generate. And the sun is currently there on the horizon. So still fairly early in the morning. We can actually break it down to see how much the home has used so far. We can add in how much solar power it's generating, how much is being put back on the grid, and how much is going into the Tesla Powerwall 2. So far today, the home's used 5 kilowatt hours. We've generated 1.2 kilowatts of solar energy. The Powerwall took 0.3 kilowatt hours to restore probably back to 99%. We've used 4.5 kilowatts from the grid, and we've put 0.4 kilowatts to the grid. Then you can go back to different days. You can also go by week, month, and year. So yesterday was a rainy day and pretty cloudy. So you can see, let's remove the Powerwall one, the green one. You can see power-wise, over the course of the day, we had a few big spikes in the house, probably around cooking times. Energy production-wise, as the solar panels made, we didn't really make that much because it was pretty cloudy all day and rainy. But it does look like there might have been a few sunshiny spots, or at least spots where it was able to generate power, that we were able to put some energy into the grid. And then Friday was a pretty good day. So if you look at Friday, power-wise, we had a pretty decent power. I don't remember what the weather looked like that day, but the home used 12.1 kilowatt hours. We produced 15.2 kilowatt hours in solar energy. We pulled 7 kilowatt hours from the grid, but we put 9.7 kilowatt hours to the grid. So when it comes to our electric bill, we would actually have a positive 2.7 kilowatt hours, which would help with yesterday. Which, you know, when you factor in the bill, would actually wind up reducing the amount that we pulled from the grid. So if we were to look at this by the year, it would break it down by the month, and then we would go back to last year. It'll give us a good example of how like last year went, and you can kind of see that the yellow for the production ramps up towards the summer and then dies towards the winter months. But the months that we actually do the best are kind of like April, just because we're using less electricity for heat and other things, and it still has a really good amount of sunlight in those months. So if you're thinking about solar, there's going to be a lot of times where we're not really talking apples to apples in comparisons. We're actually talking apples to oranges, if not apples to screwdrivers. And it's just because, like, someone, let's say if you were 50 miles in either direction from me, maybe that day you didn't really produce very well. Oop, actually, right now it's starting to get a little dark outside. So there's a cloud going by, so power's dropped pretty good. Oh, cloud's going away, and production's jumping back up. So there's a lot of weird factors. Simple things like clouds. You get, if something happened, like leaves were to fall down on your solar panels or something. Snow, ice, a little bit of frost, fog, and even to a degree the panels themselves getting dirty can cause shifts in how much power is produced. As you can see, the peak on the garage, it's pretty flat as far as the angle goes. And then the panels are mounted on the east side, which ideally you'd have it facing south. And then just ignore the flat tire on the truck. Now, one of the biggest things you want to be looking for if you think about solar is basically just looking up in your yard. So we've got this huge black walnut tree, and that black walnut tree actually causes quite a lot of shade in the wintertime. This tree over here likewise causes shade that can actually reach the solar panels, and some of the trees over there as well. I forget when the beeping started. I don't know if I can hear it. So there's that tree over there, and that one over there that can cause shade as well. Originally I wanted to put it on the shed over there, just because the shed has a north-south facing walls, and I thought it'd be one of the better places for it. But when the gentleman came out, they have a little tool that kind of shows where the shadows are going to hit. And after you got to talking about it, it more or less became kind of obvious to me that those trees would be causing major issues as the years went by. So if we were to look directly east, this time of year, the sun is way over here, but come about July, the sun will rise over here, and we'll actually catch a little bit of the neighbor's house and this big giant maple tree that I have here, causing shadows onto the solar panels over here. And the reason why I didn't put on the west side was because of these trees over here, which would have likewise caused a problem. Because again, come about July, the sun's going to be over here, whereas right now the sun when it sets is somewhere over here. And then that all changes as the seasons go. So wintertime, the arc of the sun kind of would be about over here, arc just barely up and over these trees, would cut through here and then down. So I almost always had some type of shadow from the black walnut tree on the solar panels in the wintertime. And then from the Google Maps, it really would have shown that probably the most ideal place would have been the top of the house. But for me, the top of the house is very high up there, and I wanted a little bit more protection, basically so in case we had a power outage in the wintertime, you know, ice breaks a wire or something like that, someone creams into a pole or something, I wanted the panels to be somewhere where I could clear the snow off and generate some power when needed. But everyone's gonna have a different reason for why they want to do solar. Just gotta figure out what yours is and if it makes sense in the long run. So when we did the solar panels, we also put in this Tesla Powerwall 2, still in its wrapper. And the big reason why is because by having a battery backup, should you lose power from the grid, you still have power that comes from this battery backup, which allows you to power the inverters on your solar panels in order to continue making solar power. So let's say middle of the night, power goes out. Because we have a battery backup, as long as the battery backup lasts until daytime, we can then make power with our solar panels. Whereas if you didn't have any battery backup, your solar panels wouldn't make any power because there wasn't power in the first place going to the inverters. And the same thing's probably true even high noon, middle of the day, highest production time. If the grid goes down, you would need power going to those inverters in order to make your solar panels produce energy. And then this was actually a big chunk of our project and was probably more than a third of the cost. So if you're thinking about solar, it's going to be one of those things where there's a little bit more to talk about, and we'll get into things a little bit deeper in other episodes. Well, I hope you guys liked the video. There's definitely going to be more on solar because there's so much stuff to talk about with it. I'd appreciate it if you guys had a chance to subscribe. Otherwise, check you guys next time. Let's make sure that this worked. First time screen recording on the phone.
So my system's not very big. It's just 5 panels. With an inverter, with a microinverter. That'll be difficult to edit. Okay. This is a north and west, or
Hi. Hi, Joe. Hi, Joe. Down. Oh boy.